Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Got an interesting gun on the table. It's the Sig Sauer M17. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Utreon, where we could do some videos that we can no longer do on YouTube. And you'll notice I didn't say P320-M17, I just said M17. This is actually the true military version. So there's really kind of four basic versions of these guns. There's the P320-M17. All of them, by the way, are under the hood based on the P320. But the P320-M17 is the civilian version, and it uses more normal mounting for the optic than the rest of them. There's the M17 contract overrun. That's what this one is. So this was made at the same time they were making guns that were going to be shipped to the military, and they just ran a little more over what they were contracted for, and they were allowed to sell them to the public. So this is identical to a gun that would have actually been sent to one of the military branches. The only difference was it was never actually sent to the military. The next one you'll get is the M17 commemorative, which is very similar, except it's got a few minor differences to it. And then there's the M17 surplus. Those actually were sent to a military unit. Whether a soldier actually carried them or not, it may vary. But this gun and the surplus trade-ins are absolutely identical to what the Army and other military units use. The commemorative is close, and the P320, M17, is more civilian. So if I look at the dimensions of it, it's 8 inches long by 5.5 inches tall by 1.4 thick. And you'll notice it's got safeties. That's not a common thing found on the P320s, but that's something the military wanted, so they added it. And it's ambidextrous and it's on both sides. And when it's in the fire position, the safety on the other side, so whether you're lefty or righty, is far enough out of the way that it doesn't interfere with you. So you're not going to get bit by the safety like some guns. This one has black controls. Slide stop, slide release is here. Mag release. Mag release is reversible, but it's not ambidextrous. And of course the takedown has a 3-slot Picatinny rail, and it's actually a Picatinny rail. It's not the Sig format rail, so it will, any Picatinny appliance will work on it. Where it does get very proprietary is under here. This plate, which includes the rear sight, and the rear sight's actually screwed to the plate. So when you take this apart, there's a screw underneath you take out. The sight comes off the plate, and then it can be remounted on the optic. But this uses a mounting system called Sig Lock. And there's only one optic I'm aware of right now. It's a Sig optic that will mount on this. And it mounts very securely, hence the lock part of it. But the optic is almost as expensive, if not more expensive, than the gun. So it's a very expensive optic, and right now they're kind of unobtainium. So even if you can get one, you're going to pay more for the optic than the gun, most likely. The civilian P320-M17 uses more standard mounting. It doesn't use the Sig Lock, so that all the different optics that you're used to are available. I haven't seen adapter plates yet for this to mount other optics. I'm going to be exploring that, and I'll do a follow-up if I find out that there's an optic available that is less expensive than the one that Sig offers. And if you happen to be made of money, it's the Romeo M17, that the optic I'm talking about. But last time I looked, they're $800 to $900. And the gun itself, the MSRP on the P320-M17, which of course doesn't use that optic, is significantly less expensive. It comes in around $768. These, the price will vary depending on where you find it. As they become less and less common, the price on these will go up. The various trade-in, contract overrun, and commemoratives. The commemoratives have already kind of gone skyrocket in price because there are a fixed number of them made. They're called the commemorative, and they're kind of special in that regard, so the price they're commanding is pretty high. The magazines it comes with are the 17-round magazine here I have here. Comes with one of these, and it comes with 2 of the 21-round magazines. But it's a P320 under the hood, so any P320 magazine that'll fit the grip will work. There is an M18, which is simply a smaller version of this. This is a Glock 17 size gun. So this is a service pistol. Of course, that's what it's made for. It's made for the military. It's a service pistol. A couple of unique characteristics about this. One of them is the recoil spring. So here's one of the 2 recoil springs it comes with, and you'll notice this one is all black. When I take this apart, you're going to see that the one that's in here has got orange paint on it. and this one is all black. This is a significantly heavier recoil spring. And this is made for working with NATO 124 grain, and both of them are metal, by the way. But this is made for 124 grain NATO ammo or hotter ammo. This gun came with this spring installed, and with your typical 115 grain range ammo, it barely worked. The ejection pattern was poor, it stovepiped once, it wouldn't lock back reliably, it threw the brass in your face. So if you really want to suffer, you can run the black spring with 115 grain ammo, and the gun will do its best to try to put one down the front of your shirt, and it will succeed. But if you put the orange spring, which is meant for lighter ammo, it runs flawlessly. So I ran a few tests. So I put the black spring in it. I ran some Federal HST 124 grain defense ammo. I also ran some Aguila 124 grain ball ammo, and it ran flawlessly. I did run 115 grain in this, and of course I had trouble with it. I put the orange spring in it, ran all of those ammos, and it ran flawlessly with all of them, but I did notice with the 124 grain it was quite snappy. So the spring that you put in here is kind of important. So it's not coming with two springs just to be cool, hey, you got two springs in case one wears out. It actually has a reason for it, and there's even a card in the box that kind of explains it. So the one that's got the orange on it isn't just a rusty spring, it actually has a purpose. If you get one of the actual military production runs, whether it's the M17 contract overrun, you'll get a certified authentic card that goes with it that it is actually the military version of the M17. And again, the only difference between the one in my hand and one of the trade-ins is an actual soldier hasn't handled this one. It went from the factory to a box, shipped to me, but it came, or actually shipped to the FFL, but it came the same way they all do for the military, in a cardboard box with a foam insert. So there wasn't a fancy case or any of that type of stuff that goes with it. It's just a cardboard box because, of course, from the military perspective, they're just going to put it in the armory and issue it as they see fit. The weight on this is 29.4 ounces, so it's not light. But again, this is not meant to be a pocket pistol. It's not the design intent of it. Another thing I'll note, some early reports of these mention that if you put a full 17-round magazine in it, fully loaded, inserted the magazine with the slide closed, that you'd have a very difficult time cycling the slide. I don't know if that's true or not from the past, but it isn't true of this gun, so that's an issue that I believe, if it really existed, has been resolved. And this one with a full magazine was easy to cycle just like anything else. I would imagine it was just a little bit more travel was needed in the follower at the bottom to allow to push down a little bit, because there's a loading ramp in there that's going to push down on the top round as you cycle it. And if the magazine was totally bottomed out, of course, that wouldn't work. But that problem doesn't exist in this one, so I imagine in newer production like this, that's not an issue. The sights on this are Sig Light night sights, so front and rear night sights. The front sight has a white ring on it, so you can see it's very clear and easy to see and stands out very well. The back sights don't have the white ring. It's a little harder to see, but there is a little bit of contour to them. I was able to pick them up, so surprisingly, because usually blackout type sights like this I don't do well with, but just the way they're shaped and recessed, there was enough contour I was able to pick them up, so I was actually able to shoot this well. I just had to work at it a little bit more. Other than the things with using the wrong ammo and the wrong spring, which did cause some reliability issues, but that's predictable, the gun worked. It worked reliably. When I put the right spring in for the ammo I was going to use, it just worked, and it worked flawlessly. And when I had the proper spring in it, it wasn't throwing the ammo in my face. The ejection pattern was good. It was throwing it out to the side. So kind of, again, I'll reiterate, if you get one of these, make sure you use the spring that matches the type of ammo you're going to run in it. So I'm going to take it apart, show you the internals, which is relatively easy to do. You lock it back, flip the lever, release it, pull it apart. You'll notice I didn't pull the trigger. Here's the recoil spring, and it's kind of hard to see. There it is right there. That's not rust, that's orange paint that indicates this is the lighter ammo spring. Pull out the barrel. It's a well-machined barrel. It's 4.7 inches. Nothing fancy about it, nothing polished on it. This is just basically manufactured. It's well machined, so it's smooth, but it's not a polished feed ramp. And it is conventional rifling. The rifling is sharp and clearly defined. And the gun was physically accurate. When I was able to see the sights and do my job, it did its job. You'll see in the machining there's really not much going on. The fire control group is very recognizable as from a P320 perspective, but everything is clean and well machined, but nothing is really particularly fancy. I'm just going to set the barrel back in there. And now I can show you the frame, which is very similar to basically any other P320. There's a little bit of additional complexity because you got the safety mechanism here that doesn't exist on a typical P320. So as far as frame interchangeability, this is the removable chassis, just like a P320. Of course, the safety levers and some of the other changes will make it probably less compatible with other grip frames. But overall, functionally, it's a P320 with some changes made to suit the military's requirements. Reassembling, it's relatively easy. There is one note. There's a little kind of a squareness to it. It's not round. This can make it a little twitchy getting it into the hole to push into place. And of course, this time it worked just flawlessly. But if you get it off by a little bit and the edge of that catches, you may have to twiddle with it a little bit to get it in. And then it just goes back together. Lock it back, flip the lever. And while I was mentioning that this is very similar to a P320, of course it is based on one, the safety upgrades that were done to the various P320s over the years to resolve different complaints that existed should be reflected in this. So this should be drop safe. It's designed to be drop safe. And of course you have the additional safety of the thumb safety should you choose to use it. So let's demonstrate the trigger. So the trigger is minimal take up. A decent, kind of a little bit of creep through the brake, but it's a nice brake. I had no trouble getting the trigger to do its job at the range. It works well. It's not a super short reset. It's almost all the way out. And there's a little bit of grit in it, which that'll, of course, I will assume will polish out over time with rounds. And then the brake again. So it's not a bad trigger by any stretch of the imagination. It's a decent trigger, but it's not a competition match trigger. It's not intended to be. This is a service weapon, so they don't want hair triggers. So you're not going to be looking for a super short reset, a super light trigger, but it's also not ridiculously heavy like a typical combat trigger. It's a decent trigger, and it did work quite well. So overall, if you're looking for something that is identical to what the military has, you could go after one of these. Just know you're going to have a few compromises. You're going to be, choosing the right spring for the ammo. You're going to have limited choices in the optics. If you're just wanting a P320 that is similar to the military version, but you don't want any of the kind of the characteristics that this has, the P320-M17 is probably a good choice. But if you're really wanting to stay very close to what's currently in service today, kind of like in the days of the Berettas and things like that, these are a good choice. But if you've got your eyes set on one of these, I would say act quickly. They're going to become harder and harder to find. The prices are probably just going to creep up. I don't know if these are ever going to be collector's editions like an old Ferrari or anything, but I think getting these will become more difficult and become more expensive over time versus the civilian P320-M17 is going to be just another gun like a Glock. They'll be all over the place, they'll be easy to get and easy to buy. So as I wrap up, I'll kind of give you a couple of views that I may have failed to give you before. So that's the top-down view. There's not any patterning, anything on here to reduce glare, but it is kind of a matte finish, so it shouldn't glare. And of course there's the business end, and you can see that kind of oblong shape. The exact way that's turned isn't important. It doesn't need to be exactly up and down or left or right or anything. That doesn't matter. It's just that shape may make it hang up a little bit while you're trying to put it together. Other than that, it should be totally functional and work perfectly. So hopefully that was interesting. This one is a little bit unique because of what it is, but overall, living with this thing should be just like living with any other service pistol. Easy, nice 3-finger grip, nice beaver tail, shouldn't get slide bit. It should be a decent gun to have. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.